Hey everyone, it's Steve here, the CEO of HealthNow. I'm really fortunate to be joined today by Tina, who is the CEO of SARNZ, the New Zealand Scaffolding Association. Tina, I'm just going to let you provide a little bit of an introduction on yourself and the organisation you're working for, and then we can crack into some questions.
Yeah, sure. So hi, like Steve said, I'm Tina. I'm the CEO for Scaffolding, Access and Rigging New Zealand. So we're the industry body that represents those trades and also some smaller trades that fit under that scope, such as shrink wrap, edge protection, but predominantly we're looking after those that are working at heights. So we work in two different ways. We are a membership body and we are also the regulatory body that sets the licensing for the industry and helps set some of the regulatory needs for the industry as well.
Thanks so much for that intro, Tina. Can you just give us a little bit of color around how many people you're looking after in your industry and how many companies?
Yeah, so our membership is comprised of around just under 180 members. Some of those members can have multiple yards under their scope. So effectively, we are looking at just within our membership scope, probably around 7,000 to 8,000 people. And then obviously there's a lot of those that aren't actually part of the membership body as well, but we inadvertently look after them through the regulatory settings as well. So it's quite a big scope that we're attached to, but definitely a really cool sector that deserves a lot of love as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it doesn't take long to be driving down the road and see scaffolding up somewhere, right? So those 8,000 people within the scope of the industry that you're looking after, they're doing some pretty massive things at some pretty considerable heights, which is probably a really nice segue for us to get into today's conversation, which is around injuries and the accessibility of healthcare for these individuals. So maybe we start the conversation just around how injuries affect people within construction, affect their ability to do their job productively, and kind of what are the risks around people bringing injuries into their workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't think it's just specific to our sector in this space either. We see a lot of injuries across the construction trade. It is a high risk activity, particularly scaffolding, with the weights that we're working with, the heights that we're working with. And, you know, when scaffolding is going up, a lot of the times they don't actually have a set building to be building against either. So it is a really high risk role. And I think it's a really physical role as well. So yeah, we do see a lot of injuries across our scope, but that doesn't necessarily just have to be in the physical capacity as well. A lot of those come with long-term effects. When you're thinking about the mental capacity of our people as well, you know, they've got young families they're needing to look after, they've got wives, they have people they need to look after in other capacities as well. So there's a lot going on in that space.
Do you think many of the workers within specifically the scaffolding sector or the construction industry more broadly are proactive in their healthcare acquisition, or what do you think some of the barriers are that would be preventing them from accessing care? Because I think my lens on it would be that, you know, you run a little bit of a risk within, especially these high work kind of output roles, whereby if you're bringing injuries to the site, or if there's injuries that go untreated and then you're bringing those onto the site, you're actually exposing more risk to not only yourself but others within your work site. So I'm curious to see, you know, like obviously I'm fortunate again to be able to kind of have a bit of a finger on the vein or on the pulse of what's happening in the sector, because we do have some relationships with some of the larger entities. But what's your kind of scope on whether people are accessing healthcare proactively and getting these injuries sorted before they end up becoming more serious?
Yeah, and there's definitely a couple of barriers there. So financial is always going to be a barrier in New Zealand, let's be honest. And I think it's, you know, we're seeing inflation, the cost of living rising. So when you're trying to choose between that, and there will be a lot in the construction sector that fit into the scope, is when you're trying to choose between that or putting food on the table for your family, you know, it's those sorts of decisions for a parent are a no-brainer. And then I think there's also just, when you're going to access healthcare, a lot of the times you have to fit within that 9 to 5 scope, which, you know, it's just not workable for some of the guys. They're not wanting to leave the yard to go to an appointment that's going to take them 45 minutes to get there, maybe an hour to be seen, and then 45 minutes to get back to the yard. So I think there's two barriers there, and I think there's solutions there as well. So we're seeing more companies that are offering, you know, online consultations, which is great if you're not in that you're not in the category where you're needing to be seen in person. And then you have really great options like yourselves, where you're taking that financial barrier away by partnering with the likes of employers, so they can work in that scope to actually help their employees in that space. But for our sector specifically, particularly through our apprentices at the moment, close to 80% are Māori and Pacifica, and it is a really high trait that we don't look after our healthcare in a really in a tangible way. And you're absolutely right. If you're not feeling 100% on the job, and you make a bit of an error on the site, that could have really catastrophic
I'm following the catastrophic flow-on effects, right?
Yeah.
Like drawing upon my own medical background, I think around how we used to have customers or patients. Patients is the correct term at that point in time. But patients would come in with these insidious onset conditions, which would be developing over a longer period of time, and then they would go from there, what we would call the elastic, into the plastic zone, and they would then break, right? And whether that be kind of like a patellar tendinopathy or a painful knee, there are inherent risks of not getting like treatment put in place early. And I think more broadly speaking, it goes without saying that earlier access to healthcare leads to better long-term health outcomes. So it's kind of this flywheel whereby if someone goes and accesses care, they have better long-term health outcomes, they're able to better participate within their working environment, within their family environment, they're more productive, which flows on back to their employer with economic opportunity. I think it's just, as we've discussed many times in the background, it's challenging to have those conversations with employers to get them to appreciate / recognize that by contributing value or trying to promote healthcare of their staff, which I think for a lot of employers is it's something that's traditionally been seen as their employees' responsibility outside of the workspace. It's been challenging to get them to have that kind of focus on understanding that they're actually the one that's benefiting from their employee being healthy. Like if their employee's not at work, who does it affect? It's not the employee still gets paid a full day of sick leave. The employee's having a day off, if not many days, because they're going to wait a few days before they even consider going to the doctor. But it's the employer that's the one riding the cost. They've lost a day of their employer being at work, so their productivity has gone down. They probably have to replace that worker to make sure that in the scaffolding sector, that team is able to still function as a cohesive team. And then they've still got the sick pay that they've got to pay to the individual that's off work. So I mean, I think from like a balance sheet P&L perspective, it's logical to start contributing to your employees' healthcare, and it's about having conversations like the one we're having today to get those employers to actually understand how they can go and contribute proactively and productively to get the economic outcomes they're wanting by supporting health.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's similar to what's happening in the sustainability side of the company. You just have to switch from that mindset of the short-term cost to thinking what the actual long-term savings are going to be. And you're spot on. If you're helping your employees look after their health right from the get-go, and it can be something as simple as just as feeling a bit of a niggle in the neck, if you get that taken care of much earlier rather than later, the financial benefits and the progress that you're getting on particular jobs is going to be that much quicker. They're going to be that much more productive on site. Their mental capacity is going to be that much better because they're not stressed about what effects they are providing in a kind of flow on way to their team. There's multiple factors. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. Do you know much? Well, obviously you know about our solution, right? Because there are, as I've alluded to, there's a fair few of the larger entities in the scaffolding sector who are putting funds into the digital wallets of their employees, so their employees can go access healthcare that they need. But I also know that there's a couple of other really cool initiatives that are happening in the Scaffolding Association. One that kind of comes to mind is the Work Should Not Hurt initiative. Is there any other ones that you know of that you think would be cool to make, or not cool, but productive to make people aware of?
At the moment, I think the Work Should Not Hurt work is the predominant piece that we're focusing on, and that's purely just because the sprains and strains in the industry are pretty rampant, and they're always going to be. I mean, the majority of gear that needs to be carried is unfortunately on their shoulders, their necks, and this is a really important part of the body as well. So that is a massive piece of work for us at the moment. And it is one of those things as well, getting guys to change their mindset from, you're the tough one on site because you can carry this much more than the young apprentice guy, and you've got to show them how it's done. It's about making sure that 10 years down the track, you can still pick your kids up and play with them. You can still sleep well, you can still enjoy your family time, and you can still be really productive on the work side. Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to focus. You don't just have to be on the tools for 10 years and then try to focus on, finding another role because your body's already just absolutely had it. And it's just another one of those.
That's a massive topic, actually. Like that in itself is like, you've kind of just touched on it, right? That these individuals, because of the way that they're putting their body through it at work, and then potentially not prioritizing, like you can't, it's like a car, like you can't just take the car to the racetrack constantly day in, day out and give it hell, right? Like throw it down the back straight and into corners and like give the tires everything, the engine everything, and then not take it for a service. And I think like that's when I look at how people approach their health, they kind of wait for a break point rather than looking at what's the fence at the top of the cliff. Like when I have that niggle from carrying like 4 pipes of scaffolding, or I don't know what the correct terminology is. I'm probably going to look ridiculous when some of the scaffolders watch this back. But when they're carrying the 4 lengths of scaffolding, or 5 to 6 lengths, however many lengths you can carry at one point in time, and then subsequently they get that pain through their shoulder. Like why would they not go and get that treated on day 1, 2, 3? So then they can, you know what I mean, get it sorted. Because like if you have that pain continuously, and as you start, like you alluded to, and then it starts affecting your sleep, your ability to participate in your family unit, like the flow-on effects of that sprain, that minor injury or somewhat minor injury, when it starts to become exacerbated and affects other parts of your life, like once your sleep's affected, things are only going in one direction from there. So it's like being able to go and like facilitate and access care for that service earlier. Like I think I really enjoyed the Work Should Not Hurt campaign. I've obviously spent some time with them and having conversations, and like we've kind of, especially with the organizations we're working with, Acro being one of the examples, like we had a really beautiful bit of feedback come in from I think it was one of the site managers, where like he literally had a sprain. He had hurt his back like on the job, or at the site, or correct terminology, and was able to, because of Acro providing him with a health wallet with funds to go and access his healthcare, he was literally able to go and get the care as per the recommendation of the physiotherapist until the pain was back to like 100% of pre-injury health. And this message came through, and he was like, I wouldn't have continued going if it wasn't for the funds that I was provided from Acro, because of the co-payment being the barrier to the acquisition of care. So it's like it all kind of comes into the conversation again of like the employer is the one that's bearing the cost of them not being able to work. They should be the one facilitating the care. And in this case, Acro Scaffolding which is amazing, like for their circa 350, 400 people. And then subsequently their people are able to be better and actually come to work faster. So you guys have it as well for your association staff members, which is super awesome. And we're really pleased about that as well, Tina.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things as well where when we're talking about the financial feasibility for the employee to go and access this healthcare, it's, you have to consider the financial feasibility as a company as well. And prior to finding you guys, the only option out there really was paying for insurance for individuals. And as we know, that can be ridiculously expensive. You don't actually see the follow through because they have to jump through so many barriers to actually be able to access that insurance. And as we know, insurance companies have already been absolutely flat out busy with multiple other things going on in New Zealand at the moment with the floods. And I feel like, particularly for our guys, I know my staff have already used their health wallets already too, which has been awesome. And the process is just really simple. It's super easy. There's no stress for them when they go to the doctors. They just get it sorted straight away. We take care of it. Even the process for us is really simple. And that's, moving forward every year, that's what companies are going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for ease of access. Their employees are going to be looking for ease of access.
Yeah, of course.
Our discretionary time is, what we actually want to utilize. And if your staff are having to worry about that sort of thing, that's just another added barrier. So simplicity of use is really important, and we've definitely found that with the HealthNow app and wallets.
Yeah, I do want to add a little bit more color to that, but obviously I have to be slightly diplomatic because of insurance versus HealthNow. But I think staying on the right side of the line, I think that my scope on it would be that employers should be looking at ways to support their staff with a variable expense that's only going to cost them when it's utilized. Like I am a big fan of insurance, but as you alluded to, Tina, I think that for a lot of companies, it's almost it's just not feasible, and it's not going to hit the P&L in the right way, and that's prohibitive. Like it definitely has its place, and it's a really good ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. But an analogy that I've been kind of communicating or tossing around recently online is like, why would you not have a fence at the top of the cliff? Like when you're driving around a road that has cliffs, there's not many that don't have fences, because it's almost like having the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff it's just the end point. It's like having a swimming pool that has a defibrillator but no lifeguards, or like having a car that's got an airbag with no seatbelts. It's like, let's put some preventative measures in place that stop someone falling off the cliff, so the ambulance is less needed. And I think that's where a solution like ours can come and play. And again, an economically efficient, with social capitalism at mind, where you as an employer or you as a business is able to do well, like get the productivity out of your people and have the economic opportunity from your people, but do good simultaneously by actually looking after them so they can go and be more productive for you. And I think that's where, especially in the New Zealand market, that's where employers are kind of, in my opinion, missing an opportunity to really make a difference. Tina, I did want to change tack quickly, because I think it would be a benefit for people in the construction industry to kind of hear your perspective on recruiting or attracting, recruiting and retaining staff. I know it's a massive conversation for a lot of people, and I didn't preemptively warn you about these questions, but I think that getting your authentic opinions on kind of what's happening in the macroeconomic climate, how is this going to affect the recruitment strategies of employers, and then more recently we've seen some changes in the Australia's legislation, which is going to make it easier for people to export. So what's your kind of scope there around attracting, recruiting and retaining staff, and then kind of how can companies, or what do you think companies are doing to try and be more attractive and keep their people in the country?
Yeah, and I think this is right across construction as well. Actually, probably not even just limited to construction. It's just a nationwide issue at the moment that the worker shortage is huge. And, there's not the people in New Zealand that are needed to fill those roles. And that's just the reality. But I think it kind of obviously turns it into a market where it is an employee's choice at the moment as to where they work, how long they work there for at the moment. So it is really important that employers are looking at different ways to ensure that their staff are happy, they're feeling fulfilled in their roles, and that can come in multiple different aspects, But I think, you've seen more and more surveys come out and saying wage isn't the number one reason why guys are staying in particular places. And for a lot, that will definitely obviously be important when they have families and things to look after. But, it's, and I think we see this more after COVID hit as well. People are actually looking at the full picture of what is making them happy in their day-to-day life. And I think things like, feeling valued by your employer, in terms of that they actually care for your health in a holistic sort of way. They are making sure that you're fed on site, even little things like that. Like we just had a really awesome piece come out with the construction accord in one of our members, Scaffolding. And they are just attacking it in a really simple sort of way, really people focused, and making sure that they're fulfilled, as soon as they step onto the work site, and they're happy from coming in totally. 6 a.m. until the point that they leave, that they're waking up really excited to get back to work as well. And it's just simple things like that. They're providing breakfast. They're looking after their healthcare. They have 4 psychologists on the book. And their people are really happy. So I think it's exploring those sorts of options. It doesn't necessarily just have to be adding $1 on every time to keep them in that space. Yes, obviously pay rises are nice in the scope that they are needed to be given, but you've got to start looking at it from a much broader view.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, right? Like there was always a saying that's tossed around the yard, so to speak, if someone's willing to go down the road for $1, right? But when you think around the broader picture of someone's employment situation and all of the auxiliary benefits, which in New Zealand we haven't really done auxiliary benefits that well, but you've kind of pointed to a few of them: the food on the side, after work drinks and social time with your team, making sure people feel like they belong. Because I think what we're kind of pointing to is, broadly speaking, I think a lot of, especially not even especially harder working industries, it's across every industry that, and I'm again quite lucky and fortunate to be able to have these conversations across a broad spectrum. But I think business leaders need to remember that their people are their product.
Absolutely.
If you're a scaffolding business, you're not actually selling, like, yes, you're selling the erection of scaffolding, but like in every instance of that function, there is a human that's engaged, whether it's in the sales journey, whether it's in the implementation, whether it's in the management of the customer relationship. And this is like for most entities, like even I think around my business, right? And we have a software company. People are still my product. Like if I don't look after my engineers and if they don't feel valued and don't feel like they're able to contribute to something meaningful, they're not going to come in and bring their best selves into their employment. Or into their, I mean, like job is, I don't want to use the term job because I hope that it's like something that they're more passionate about than just having to do it for an income. But like that's kind of the way that we've been able to attract and recruit and retain our staff, is by trying to make it something that, rather than focusing on, hey, you come in here and you do X to get Y dollar output, it's like, hey, you come in here into a place that you really enjoy to spend time with people that you like spending time with, to do something that's like solving a significant problem and able to really help people. And I think, I mean, yeah, we haven't touched too much on the purpose of scaffolding, but I think just functionally speaking, it's like scaffolding is one of the most important parts of a construction site, right? Like it's not just scaffolders that are on the scaffolding. It's painters, it's builders, it's everyone, it's electricians, it's plumbers, everyone else that needs to go and do their job is going to be interacting with the scaffolding at one point in time. So like they actually have an extremely important function. And I think that, like, in addition to everything we've just discussed around auxiliary benefits and making sure people feel like they belong, it's about like driving that purpose as well and making sure that they're aware of how important their function is within the kind of the sector or within the flywheel of the construction process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the days of saying keep your work and your home life separate, it's just not the case anymore. It's so hard to switch off after work, and particularly for scaffies. I mean, it's not just a high risk role, it's a high pressure role too, because just like you pointed out, they have so many other trades that are coming on to the work that they're doing. So it is really important that they're feeling 100%, so they can make sure that all those other teams are kept safe. And I know they put a lot of pride in themselves to ensure that their work is up to standard too, because they feel that pressure. So thinking that it's easy, they go do their work and then clock out, that's not the case. So, they've got to want to wake up and feel good about coming to work to perform at their best. So, yeah, like you said, all those auxiliary benefits, they are going to be really important moving, I would say, even into the next 5 years, because this worker shortage isn't going to stop anytime soon. And like you said, with Australia changing their rules, particularly on how to get citizenship there now, I mean, you hope that wouldn't pick up too much. And a lot of the times, yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times
is about to get more fierce.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they obviously do. No, I'm not going to say this. Just move this bit out of the video.
We'll remove that.
I'm going to get a slap on the head.
We won't talk about how Australia pays higher than New Zealand. Cool.
But yeah, like I said,
I'll flow onto a final question, team, because what I would really like as well, because you're quite like inspirational. So I really just want to like point to you and give you like 5 minutes just to talk around, like, I don't want to do it just from like because you're a female and because obviously like your cultural, how do you want me to frame it? Because I feel like, do you know what I mean? Like I just want to be like it's not often that I meet with like young, how can I frame it without it sounding?
You can frame it whatever way you wish. I'll turn it into whatever I need it to be. It's fine. And I mean, I'm not
Okay.
opposed to it being that way either. I think it's important that young women out there know that.
That's what I'm wanting. That's what I want. But I don't want like you're inspirational not because you're a female, because you're just fucking rad. But like I think that like if I frame it that way, it's gonna like hit notes slightly differently.
No, honestly, I promise whatever the answer is, I will make sure it's
Okay,
not
sweet.
scoped in that way.
Okay. Ready? Tina, before I let you leave, I mean, obviously, like the construction industry, it's not very common that when I have conversations with leaders in construction that I'm met on the other side of the screen by, well, first and foremost, someone so young, and then secondly, a female. I think that it's quite, I mean, you've been quite like inspirational for me just with respect to your leadership of the industry, and like when I've been able to interact with you at the association events, like you're just such an amazing leader and you've done such amazing things for the industry. And again, like I find you to be quite inspirational, and I think others would as well. I just wanted you to spend a couple of minutes talking about your experiences being like such a strong leader, and then also being a female leader within the construction sector, because I think that there's a lot of people that would benefit from hearing some of that story.
I mean, firstly, thank you for the kind words. It's really lovely to hear. And I think, I mean, it definitely has been an interesting journey. I've been with SARNZ for, when we get to August, it'll be 2 years. But I will say across my journey, I have found some really, really incredible women in this sector. And to be honest, I think I've benefited a lot from them. For the likes of, there's the CEO of the cranes industry, Sarah Toast. She's amazing. You have the wonderful Colleen Upton, who is doing incredible things in the plumbing industry. And she has been doing for a very long time as well. There is a huge amount of fierce women out there, but I think there's a lot of pressure on us as well to ensure that there is clarity for the younger ones coming up through the trades, or even just going through their schooling phase and wondering what options are available for them. It's important that there is representation at this level, and then for my case in particular as well, Māori representation at this scope. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things. I definitely feel the pressure in that phase, but I'm lucky that I'm supported by a really incredible board. They're super knowledgeable. They want the best for the industry, and I think that's worked really well as well for our partnership. But then I'm also supported by, like you said, I wouldn't look this good without a really brilliant team as well. And my team are just a bunch of unicorns.
Yeah, well, that's servant leadership at its finest, though, right? Like find good people that you can put around you and make sure that they're able to do their jobs properly, and everything tends to fall into place quite productively. But,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
so I don't think I would.
It's also extremely modest of you, because I think, I mean, I've had the pleasure and fortune to spend a fair bit of time with you, and I don't know whether, I mean, all good leaders do say that, but I think that there's definitely some credit that needs to be taken in your own right around your own functions, because you've been able to speak so productively in those public environments. You've obviously been able to show a pathway forward for the industry to be able to, and you've been able to pull in certain functions from outside of the industry into the SARNZ network to then be able to open up opportunities for your membership group. And I think again, like it's just I think anyone watching this video, I think that they should be inspired by the work that you've been able to do within the construction sector. And I think the age thing is probably the most impressive thing, because you're definitely not old, and to be able to move into like a CEO role at such a young age, and then to have such a strong impact, and then in construction as well, which you and I both know is again, I'm going to have to word it diplomatically, but it's traditionally run by people in subsequent generations. Later generations. So yeah, I think it's just extremely impressive.
No, thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's just one of those. I feel like the cool thing about being able to step into this role, and I do feel really privileged to be able to sit in this role, is, the sector have been doing all these amazing things for such a long period of time. I just don't think they particularly had it on a high enough platform, and they definitely deserve more than what they're getting now too. So no, I think I take a lot of privilege in this role, and I take a lot of pride in making sure that the sector is getting what they need in all scopes, like you said, with the partnerships, making sure that people understand how important they are on the trade site. Because yeah, like one of the unfortunate things is scaffolding is one of the only things you see no sign of once you leave. So when you're looking at this brilliant build in commercial or industrial or residential, just know it all started with the scaffies.
Yeah, fair point, Tina. On that note, I think we might look to wrap up because I've already taken, I mean, no one else is going to know this, but I've taken 40 minutes of Tina's time this morning to have a much longer conversation, which you'll be able to see broken up into a few different segment pieces. This one will be cut into its own segment piece because I think Tina needs her own space to talk about how awesome she is, because that's the facts of the matter. But it's been a really awesome conversation, Tina. I'm really appreciative of you taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciative of your efforts to communicate health now to the industry. I think together we've been able to have, or obviously together we've been able to have a pretty significant impact on some individuals' health access, which is amazing. And I'm just looking forward to being able to increase the scope of that impact across a wider industry. And through your connections that you've already made into other industries, it's been extremely fruitful. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. It was great chatting.